Hey, Julie, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. As you were doing your bumper before we started recording, I was grooming myself, and we're going to talk about hair color today. What do you think about my hair color?
I love your lack of hair color.
Well, can you tell? It's got a little blue tone to it.
Okay, but you're a little fuzzy right now. So I'm like,
Ah,
yes, I can see a little blue on the top of your head, but I also see some pigmented and unpigmented hair in there
yes.
as well, kind of like me.
Yes, yes, I like how you've got that going. So you are a colorist who educates in color, and I think you have a fascinating way of going about the entire topic. So that's what we're going to get into today. But before we get into the art and the science and everything that you do for the community, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? How did you get into this business?
Oh, wow. Gosh. All right. I'm going to try to keep that short because it's a long story. But
Don't
um,
leave
I,
out anything good, though.
okay. All
For the
right.
sake of being short, don't leave out anything. We want all the good.
We want the highlights of the short reel. Okay. Yes. Okay. So right now I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm originally a Jersey girl. And I actually went to fashion school. I did fashion business when I came out of college. And I lived so close to the city that I couldn't get housing.
New
There's
York
just
City.
such a, yeah, New York City. You couldn't get housing. And so at 19, I'm walking the streets of the city, hour on the bus. I only lived 30 minutes away. So, all your friends are having a good time at traditional school, and you're like, what am I doing? And then the winter hit, and I was on a bus, and I thought, oh my God, I think this bus is going to flip. What am I doing? Because they never cancel school up there. I don't care.
No.
No, it's like blizzard. You're walking through the blizzard.
Right.
So I made a decision at the point. I was like, I got to get out of here. And so the plan was to go to traditional school in Pennsylvania, but plans pivoted. And I wound up coming down to Georgia and going to school down here. And at the time, they didn't have any more fashion business that I could jump into. I was looking for it. And so I was like, what can I do that's artistic and business, right? Because that was kind of where my lane was. And so I did music business,
Oh.
which is kind of interesting. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. So, fashion business, music business. And then I wound up, this is a crazy story, but I wound up going in the ministry for 8 years working with high school students. And because of that, I left kind of I finished school, but my heart wasn't in it,
Okay, hold
right?
on a minute. Hold on a minute. Okay, so fashion education to
Yes,
music business education to the ministry.
yes,
And
yes.
just talk about that transition from kind of like an artistic sort of education to the ministry. What drove that?
I think we all have our own stories and things that were hard in life. And so I know I went through so much of my time alone. And when I bumped into a situation where there was an opportunity to help kids to have things that I might not have had, someone to talk to, someone to guide you, things like that. And someone asking me, hey, you're really good with them. Would you like to do this, as your job? And I was like, well, my heart wasn't in the music business. I did it because there was no fashion business, right? So I was like, yeah, I would love it. And so I jumped in head first, got trained by an older couple, and I was in it for 8 years. And it's interesting now because some of the kids that I worked with, their moms, they have more kids than I do. They're in their 30s. It's pretty wild to see all of that come full circle. But so I was doing that for 8 years. And then at a certain point, there was a big blow up. The church fell apart. My husband and I lost our jobs.
Uh-oh.
I just bought a house. I'm about to have a baby. It's right before Christmas. And the bottom just dropped out. And so we went through a really, really hard time. And at maybe when my kids were 3 and 4, we're still going through this hard time.
Mm.
I went, okay, I need a sanity job. I'm tired of living in yoga pants and a t-shirt every day. And I remember crying to a friend of mine, telling her this story, and she worked at a salon. And she worked at the salon that I actually went to a few times. An old roommate of mine apprenticed there. And she said, listen, we're looking for some front desk help. Do you want to join? And I was like, well, absolutely. It was 45 minutes away. So it
Oh my
would
God.
be, yeah, but it didn't matter to me. You know, like when you're in a place where you're low or you're desperate, you'll do whatever you can to just kind of bring some hope. And so I did. I went there, interviewed, and turned out I was there for 6 years. But I remember going there and having this interview, and I loved it. You know, when you realize you go, these are my people, this is where I should be. That's how I felt. And so I started part-time at the front desk, and I worked with a woman, Nancy Meeks. She was amazing. She was not a hairdresser herself, but she was an amazing manager of the salon. And so I learned so much in that time. And when I was there initially, they said, hey, you want to apprentice? And I was like, my kids were 3 and 4. It was 45 minutes away. And they said it's full time. And I was like, I'd never see my kids. So I said no. And I was there at the front desk for 4 years. And it was, 4 years. And I loved it. I loved learning the business because I could just sit in the middle of the salon and watch the business. I could watch the stylist. I could watch what happens in the front desk, the business side, the artistic side, all of it. And after 4 years, I did that for 4 years. They asked again, and I was like, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. And so I think it was a really good thing because I had to almost learn the owner because that's who I would be training under. It's like you got to know the owner before you actually train under them to survive it because apprenticeship is not easy. So after 4 years, I decided to jump on the floor, and I was 38 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unusual, very unusual in this business.
It is unusual in this business, but interestingly enough, if I share that story, so many people come out of the woodwork that talk about they moved from another job, something that they weren't happy in, to this job. This was their dream job. This was what they wanted to do. And for me, it wasn't necessarily a dream job. I looked at it at first and I said, oh no, I do not want to live that life, right? Because it's not easy being a hairdresser behind the chair. I did it out of necessity, but turned out I was really good at it and I really loved it. And I loved how all the things worked. You know what I mean? And so, and I loved the people. It was like, your tribe, this is where I should be and what I should do. Because in that interim, I was like, well, I think I need to get another job. So I went interviewed at office jobs and, I was like, oh no, once you're in this business, it's really hard to leave it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay. So you transitioned from receptionist to apprentice. And how long did you apprentice before you started taking your own clients?
Well, you do it along the way. So I can't remember when, but immediately I had a chair right next to my mentor. And so I would mix all of his colors, hand all of his foils. It was 3,000 hours. So it's double the time than when you do hair school. So, but I was taking clients pretty early on, because it was trial by fire. Like, how else are you going to do it? So he would give me certain things to do and, first highlights, all of those good things. So pretty much right away.
And from an income standpoint, because you're certainly more mature at that point than most young hairdressers, you were making an income as a receptionist. Now all of a sudden you're an apprentice. Sometimes apprentices get paid, sometimes they don't, just depending on the situation. Were you getting paid during this period of time?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Okay, so I was very lucky. Yes. I actually got paid $1 less to be an apprentice than I was at the front desk, and I got tips. So I how you don't realize how good you had it until afterwards, and then you hear everyone else's story and you're like, oh, I had that quite good. So I was being paid to learn, which was really kind of a special thing. I'm really grateful for that, for sure.
And I've heard so many horror stories with the mentor, as well as good stories with the mentor. And it's always a very similar story to yours where, I knew somebody and I went to that salon, not a whole lot of due diligence on which salon was originally chosen. And then you just kind of get absorbed by a mentor, not really because you did a lot of due diligence on whether that was a good mentor or a bad mentor. And so lucky if it's a good one and unlucky if it's a bad one. It sounds like yours was good.
Well, you know what? I think that I had a lot of mentors in that situation. So my mentor was really good in certain aspects. He was in the business a long time, NAHA winner, just a really great colorist. But there were things missing in terms of the why and how that he couldn't explain. And then he didn't cut hair. So I had another mentor who was a hair cutter. And then when there were questions I couldn't get answered, it was about a 7-chair salon. So it was a really tight-knit place. And they all were amazing. They all were there for me and all wanted me to win. And so I could sit behind anyone's chair and ask whatever questions I wanted. Like if I couldn't get the answer from my mentor, I'd go over to Mary and I would ask Mary all the questions. And then if she couldn't, I'd go over to Julie. I'd go to Kimberly. I'd go to Buzz. And it was like a family affair. And that
Really
was
cool.
it was a really cool experience. And again, you don't know what you have until you go out there and you see what's going on. And so I feel so grateful, like to this point of what I do today and the way that we give back started there. It started there because, I would ask them so many questions, it's not even funny. Now, I had to learn how to ask questions because, in that time, you don't realize when you're not a stylist and you're working on your clients, you don't realize you're infringing on time and you're infringing on that client. And so I had to learn how to ask those questions when and how. But man, even to this day, I'm still close friends with all of them. Really grateful for each one of them. And I tell them all the time, like, I do this because of you.
So how long were you there?
I was there for a total of 6 years.
Okay. Why'd you leave?
Because, so interesting. Okay. So the manager that was there, her name was Nancy, like I said earlier. She was really good at keeping everything nice and clean because the owner was my mentor and he was an artist. And then Nancy ran the business. When Nancy retired, it became very tricky, because there went the manager. So now you have the artistic people jumping in. And I also realized, I'm 45 minutes away. It's very hard to build your clientele that far away. So I had to kind of choose. I had to choose between where am I going to build this clientele? And I also had to choose because my kids were going into middle school. And if I was that far away from home, I had to choose as a mom.
Yeah.
So I made the jump. It was not comfortable, nor was it easy. Especially when you're so loyal and you've been there for so long, but you have to do what's best for your future sometimes. And so we had to part ways and I had to make that decision to jump to a new salon closer to home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so how did you choose that salon?
Okay. This is a good one. Honestly, out of fear. I chose it out of fear.
Fear of what?
Because I was afraid to change color lines. Because I didn't know any other, you know what I mean? This is it's one of those things where you see all of the little instances that led to where you are today. I chose the salon that would have the same color line that I had. I didn't choose it because it was the right fit.
Mm-hmm. What color line was that? Just curious.
It was Schwarzkopf.
Okay.
I started with Schwarzkopf. Yep.
So was that the right decision to choose a salon that way?
It turned out no. I had to leave that salon. And it is also very difficult when you've been in a salon that was managed so well for so long by a manager outside of the artist, right? Mm-hmm. And so now there's a lot of salons that maybe the owner is the artist, but they're also managing. And so it's hard to get both of that together. It's a difficult thing. And so, it was hard to find a place that especially when you come from somewhere that's just like this and it's been around almost 30 years, it's not new. It's pretty well oiled. And so, that was a bumpy transition.
So it was a poorly run salon. And so how long did you spend there?
I was there for a couple of months.
Oh,
and
really short. Okay.
It was really short. And then I went to a different salon. And I was there probably too long, to be honest.
Okay.
but I didn't have anywhere else I wanted to go. There was nowhere else appealing at the
Well, why
time
did you choose the second salon there?
because I thought that the vibe was good and I thought that I would get the help I needed with coloring. And things shift over time,
Yeah.
and you watch, maybe you had an idea of who someone was and then you watch things happen. You're like, yeah, that's not who I thought that person was. And so probably good to leave, but I didn't. And so, hindsight's 2020, but then at the same time, there were a lot of good things that came out of the hard. So,
So how long did you grind it out there?
almost 5 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That
Yeah.
is a long time.
Well, and I will tell you this, you know what? My husband and I are built the same way. You're always hopeful. Okay, well, maybe it'll get better, or maybe this, or maybe that, or you have coworkers that make it better. So even though there are hard things, you have great coworkers, and so you team up together. And I will tell you that I have amazing relationships that came out of that time, very similar to the first time when I started at that original salon. So I'm so grateful to all of those people. We're still really close today. I'm actually going to have dinner tonight with one of them. So, lots of good through some of the hards.
Okay.
For sure.
So you spent 5 years there. Then where'd you go?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
but
where is here?
Here is with my education business. So after I left that salon, I had to choose. I was like, at that point, so while I was there, I started working for a color company, and I started growing in that color company. So I was educating and behind the chair, and then became a national trainer with one of the color companies there, which was really great. Met a couple of mentors along the way, learned a lot. And so I just started thinking, gosh, I love this education part. I don't love representing a brand because I didn't care about selling the product. What I cared about was the education. And sometimes when you're with a company, you have to be careful in what you're teaching. You have to teach legally, right? What is in their book. And so I knew from learning what I did that there was more that could help people. And so I started doing my own independent classes outside of teaching with that company. And so it was almost like springboarding before I left that salon. It was kind of a springboard. And then COVID happened and I kept teaching. And it was funny because I had just started teaching independently right before COVID happened. And we were going to continue the classes. And so when COVID happened, a friend of mine sent a message to me and she said, hey, will you go online and teach about lighteners and what they do to hair? And I was like, all right, no problem. So I did. And people just resonated with what we were sharing. It was helping people. So we kept going and kept going. And when we went back into the salons, when they opened the doors, I said, listen, I said to my boss, I said, listen, I want you to know, I want to go part-time behind the chair and part-time educating because eventually I want to shift that way. And she was great with that at the time. And then when we parted ways, I was like, there's just no other place I want to go. I didn't want to be in a big salon. That is just not where I grew up in the industry. I'm like, I don't think you can recreate what you had. It's a very difficult thing. So I was like, I think I'm just going to do this full time. I love it. I'm really good at it. It's helping people. And we've been doing it now for a little over 2 years.
Wow. Okay. And so what happened to your clients? Are you still behind the chair now and then?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So 100% education.
100% education for now. That's kind of where I landed. My heart just wasn't in it to go back. The thought of highlighting another client just made my heart sink. I was just like, I just don't want to do it. I love hair. I love seeing the change. I just didn't want to do clients. And so what I did was all those friends and connections I had, my clients knew them because we worked together. And so I would specifically give them over to certain people, say, listen. So it was great for the clients because they already had that relationship. And it was great for me because I knew that they were going to get taken care of. And so in the end, everybody wins.
So now I know why you're good at Instagram and you post so much because you're not behind the chair.
This is what I do.
Yeah, this is what you do.
This is what I do.
And you're doing it really well as far as I can tell, but let's get into it. So what is I know that you are brand agnostic. Is that right?
Agnostic. I haven't heard that one before.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, that's a new way for me to hear it.
yeah.
Yes, yes. We teach hair color across the board, no matter what color line you choose to use. Use what you want, use what you love.
And so you obviously theory and the fundamentals and things like that. And then when it gets to the particulars, I know a lot of hair color brands, they like to use that they have their language, right? Because they want people to speak their language only. But you figured out a way to do that.
I don't find it that different. I don't. When you do hair, if someone says they're using an alkaline demi or you're using a demi or you're using this, you can figure it out. Like if you understand the chemistry and what's going on, and there I could just turn the tube around and I can read it and I go, I know what this is. Just the pH, I know what it's going to do. It's not that different.
Okay, so you're offering now, and it's called Colors with Chemistry, colorswithchemistry.com. Explain your offering now. Is it all digital? Do you travel and do in person? How do you do it?
Well, we decided to not do in person because we started in COVID. And what happened was we're reaching so many people that, the need is so large. We reached people in all different countries. So far we had stylists coming from 16 different countries. So we are able to reach further when we do it. We do live virtual classes, and then we have a couple of pre-recorded classes for either those that are unsure that they really want to learn with us. Like, hey, here's a little bit of an example of what we do. If you love it, great. And it's enough to really be meaty, right? For it to help them. But at the same time, if they don't want to invest or they can invest, at least it gives them something that they can really dive into. So pre-recorded, we've got some, printable color theory tools that they can use if they just want a worksheet, something very simple. And then the course that we have, it's a 3-part course because it's a lot of information. So we try to break it down. And the main goal is for someone to feel more confident in no matter what they choose to use in their formulations and how they're affecting the hair and how to get a more predictable color result. So
what's always fascinating to me about our industry, I'm 23 years in now, and it's not changed from the first year that I've been here to now, is the need for education, despite the fact that we have all these beauty schools and we're licensed, et cetera, et cetera. So try to explain to me why that is.
Yeah,
Why do so many, I'll ask it this way, why do so many seasoned hairdressers need fundamentals and, beyond?
Gosh, that's such a great question. It's interesting. I thought about that today. And I hope that somebody would be willing to tackle this. I think that it would be really helpful. Kind of like, what's the source of the problem? Like, why are so many needing this? For me, in my opinion, I think hair school is too short. It's not enough time. And so no matter what, like I know there's hair schools that maybe have educators that aren't so trained, but then there's educators that teach in hair schools that are amazing. They just don't have enough time to get done what needs to be done for someone to really be at least solid on the floor. You don't have to be an expert or anything, but to feel really good. We have people coming all the time to these classes that did not learn the basic color wheel or how to actually move a color besides cancel or neutralize. And I'm talking people that are 20 years in. It's pretty amazing. And so, and it makes me hurt for people because I'm like, that's amazing. You've been doing hair for this long and you're feeling this lack, it's like, this is the basic stuff. Somebody should have given this to you. So let's give it to you. But what happens, in my opinion, when you come out of hair school, it's like, well, where do you go? Where do you go? Well, you can go to your manufacturer, which is great. I have nothing against brands. I love brands. I just don't want to represent one. But they're going to teach you what their product does, and there's going to be limits on what they're going to teach you, right? And for me, as a colorist, if I know that I can teach you how to make a 5 volume, I want to teach you how to make a 5 volume so you don't get a bump of the base, right? But if I'm working for a color company and you've only got 10 volume and there's ways to make 5 volume, but legally I'm not allowed to teach you that, then I have a problem with that. So I want freedom to be able to teach you, Eric, no matter what line, like what could you do, right? it opens doors. So I feel like there needs to be education more like that, like across the board.
Mm-hmm.
How does the chemistry work, no matter what line? Or how does the chemistry work so that if I'm working with this line, I can decipher what I'm working with a little bit easier without going, will this bump the base? Well, I could teach you how to figure that out, right? You don't have to wonder or be in fear. Will this bump the base? Will this not? How much lift? How much not? All of that good stuff.
How much anxiety you're relieving out there. I mean, the listeners know I don't do hair, but I've been in this business long enough, had enough conversations to know, and I have my own experiences in other realms where if I'm not sure about what I'm doing, I mean, what an anxious experience that is.
It is a very anxious time behind the chair. I always think baby stylists are so brave and courageous because they literally walk into the salon every day encouraged because they have no idea what's coming at them and they don't know if they're going to be able to do it, right? But there was a moment I had in one of the very first classes I did in a salon that was independent. And one of the stylists that was coming there, huge on Instagram, amazing colorist. And she said to me, I love this class. There are times that I feel like an imposter because I don't know all of this. Right. And I was like, gosh, I feel that. Right. And this part of why I did it was that second salon that I went to, there was 4 color line changes in 6 months.
Oh my God.
For me. Okay. And so it was for me because I was coming into the salon. I had 2 color lines. I came from another one. Right. So that's 2 for me. Then it switched again and then it switched again. So for them, it was 2. For me, it was, 4. But and that was another pivotal moment for me because no one in the salon knew how to convert. Nobody. And it didn't matter if you had a master certificate from your color line. If you can't figure out what the differences are. And that's what made me go, holy crap, I need to figure this out because I need some freedom. Because if I leave here and go somewhere else, like I told you, I moved to a salon out of fear because of not knowing. And so it's like, I feel like people are living in fear in a lot of different ways where they don't have to be, especially if you know it, you can pass it on. I've known somebody that was in a salon for 20 something years and didn't leave because he didn't have confidence in his ability to formulate.
Yeah.
So
amazing. Okay. So as you're doing these classes the last couple of years and hundreds and hundreds of people are doing these classes and they're asking you questions, many seasoned hairdressers in there, what are the top mistakes that even the seasoned hairdressers are making with color?
Well, that's an interesting question because it depends, right, on the lift side or the deposit side. I think when it comes to the lift side, I think people don't know what a developer does versus what the alkalizer does. What's the job and what's happening? It's like that base. Well, we talk about that in class and teach them, like the developer, what the role is. And what does a 10 versus a 20 volume do? Like you got to know that stuff because if I'm in a situation where my book tells me if I'm going to do great coverage, I've got to use this volume for this. But what happens if you do that and you're getting something you don't want? If you don't know how all those pieces work, you can't adjust your formulation the way you want to get what your eye sees, right? So if you learn all those little pieces, you then get to open a creative door for yourself and you're not so stuck.
I love your description of what it is to lift hair. Describe that for the listeners.
Oh, yes. Okay, so
because I say this because people talk about it all the time. They throw this term around, but yet when you describe it, you're like people aren't thinking about it for what it really is.
Yes, and so these are the things you learn from all your mentors, right? We're all a compilation of who we learn from. So I learned from my mentors that when it is a chemical reaction happening. So when you take this reaction, your developer and your alkalizer, and you're mixing them together, you put it on the hair and it is literally breaking down the fiber and breaking down the melanin all at the same time. So it's creating breakdown. We say lift, right? But it's not lifting anything out. It's just breaking down. So I use a little visual on my Instagram page because I feel like for us, and this is something that kind of stood out a long time ago. I was hearing everything auditory, and I said, what I'm hearing, I need to give them a visual because our industry is very visual. So let me give them a visual of what they're hearing. So I took a little Alka-Seltzer tab and I put it in the water, and then I took it out. And I said, that's what happens when you break down hair, when you're lifting it. So now if I'm going to put it back in again, I'm lifting it some more and lifting it some more. So the more we lift, the breakdown happens more. It's smaller. It's
right. The tab gets porous and it shrinks.
Yes.
It gets chipped away, right?
It gets chipped away. Exactly. And so it's like little things like that. If people would just describe and show, then we would understand a little bit better, of what's going on. Why someone with level 3, it would be harder to get them to their level 9. And if you do that, why there's more damage than if you're taking a level 7 to a 9, right? So understanding those concepts is huge.
And what's your opinion on bond builders? Do you use them? Do you have a favorite one? What's your take?
Okay, so when I did do hair, did I use it? Yes, I used it, but I used it as a buffer, not necessarily a fixer. I don't think that you can fix it with a bonder. I think you can give a little bit of buffer. That's my opinion on it. And I think and the other thing is understanding that all bonders are not created equal. In learning the chemistry side, you're looking at the ingredient deck and what the intention of each bonder is. Some of them, like if you look at them, one of them says it's going to go inside and create this internal bond with this molecule. Then another one says, well, we're actually going to connect and create bonds this way. And then another one's like, well, we're actually repairing the CMC, so everybody's point of difference is a little bit different. But if you understand, okay, so here's where I'm coming in with it. If you understand the chemistry side, you can decipher all of that without having to rely on the marketing story or get stuck in the marketing story, and understanding how bonds break. Like what's happening when you put a permanent color on, what bonds are breaking and how are they breaking? It's like basic principles, Eric, and that way when things come your way, you get to critically think because you've got these solid principles.
So this is an interesting topic right now, which is why I bring it up. There's a lawsuit out there that you probably have heard about that Olaplex is getting sued by. I think there's 70 people who jumped in there. And it's funny, the lawsuit is only for like $75,000. The damages that are being claimed are very small, so one has to think. But the plaintiffs are accusing the company of something which is the opposite of what the company says that its product does. Which, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of fuzziness, in what they claim. A lot of chemists tell me certain things, that are maybe in opposition to what the company says. And then now you've got K18 out there who's proposing that their product does X, Y, and Z. And of course, all the brands have their different variations of bonding products. And some are patented, some are just maleic acid and polymers, and some are this and some are that. What say you about the chemistry of it? Is it BS, or is it just a Band-Aid, or is it actually doing something?
Well, it is doing something. And here's why I say that. Because what I do when it comes to situations like that, because obviously I'm not a chemist, I'm a colorist who understands the chemistry, right? Which is very different. So I go to my cosmetic chemist friends who do understand the chemistry, and I listen to what they say. So I've listened to Cosmetic Chemist. She's on Instagram. She has great input. They do a podcast themselves called The Beauty Brains. They talk specifically about the science of it there.
The Beauty Brains?
Yes. And so they've got...
And what's the Instagram? Is it Beauty Brains?
It's The Beauty Brains 2018.
That's the name of the Instagram account?
I believe that's the Instagram account. I think someone might have had the Beauty Brains. But so there's an episode specifically where they talk about the science of it. And I think that's where hairdressers need to go, because I think we go to each other, which is fine. right? Which is fine. And I think we understand some things, but we are not the chemists. There is another chemist, Dr. Saeed. He works on this as a profession, and he also speaks on it too. So my advice, I will tell you my thoughts on it, but my thoughts are coming from these guys. And so if you want the source, that's where you go. You go to the cosmetic chemists that are not benefiting from the sale of the product. Right. I think that's important.
Dr. Saeed, is that a website that people would go to, or an Instagram?
No, he actually just did a podcast himself recently, and he talked a little bit about it. Yes. So it was, I believe, on how to cut it. That's
what it's called, how to cut it.
Yeah, that was the podcast, but his episode, I can't remember what episode number it is, but he talks a little bit about it as well. So my suggestion is, I love us. We're amazing, and we have lots of thoughts on those things, but let's go to the source and go to some cosmetics chemists that are teaching the science of it. And that really will guide us the best. The origin, the people that know, they study it for a living.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we don't want a blind leading the blind situation. You want to talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
Well, I think we do that a lot in our business, which sometimes is a little scary, because there are some times where the blind is leading the blind, or we have a bad game of telephone. Nobody, I don't believe anyone has any malice in their intentions in that, but it happens all the time. And the reason I say that is, you put something on, like, let's say a hair forum on how developer works in the role, and you're going to get 50 million different answers. Right. And there shouldn't be. Like, we've got to figure out how to do better. And so so when it comes to that topic, I always say, go to the source and those that are not benefiting from the sale of that product. And you're going to get a better scientific peer review on what their thoughts are.
Talk about the overlapping of art and science with what we do in the hair coloring industry, because it's one of the most interesting parts of it, and I think why a lot of people do it. I think maybe more of us are focused on the art, and then maybe we bear with the science, but it's so important, isn't it?
Gosh, yes. It is so important. And you think about it, like even musicians, it's math based. There's so much math in music, and it's kind of like the thing that is the beginning of all of it. Even if you study back on some of these artists that started, even like Isaac Newton and all them, they were so into the science, all of the artists. And so it's really an interesting study if you look back. But here's what I would say. Like, even when we call it the Foundations of Color Theory class, we focus on color theory across the board, no matter what industry you work in, but then we have to translate it to our medium, hair color. Hair color is a chemical, whether you like it or not, right? And so you have to understand how that chemical works. How does your chemical color form so that you can work color theory with it? So I can come in and I work with paints to show them how color affects color, but then I also have to teach them, how does your color form? What's in it? What is your dye? What happens if you mix three boxes of color in one? What's really going on? And so, because it's not going to be the same, and so we think with artistic brains, but we work with chemical color. And so you got to combine the two worlds. There's just, if you want to open your creative box, you have to combine the worlds. There are plenty of artists that are beautiful behind the chair. They do amazing work. They don't want to touch the chemistry, although they touch it every day, and that's okay. But they could open their boxes so much wider if they had just known, right? Even when we talk about color removal, and we talk about the fact that color doesn't actually reside in the hair. And we'll ask them, we'll teach them what color is, how you see it, and how you change it in hair specifically. And then when we'll ask them at the end, after kind of we've taught them the entire thing, we'll say, well, when you're doing color removal and color is not in the hair, what are you removing? Right? And so it's like, if you understand, it's actually a chemical and you're breaking those down, that makes you understand, okay, I better understand the dye that I'm working with and the removers that I have and what they do to each type of dye. Because if I know that, then I know which one to pick at the right moment. And then if I'm breaking it down, I know this one's going to break down the natural hair. This one's not. So in this situation with that I'm dealing with in the chair, which one do I use? Well, what end result are you looking for? All of those things. It's like, it's the basis and foundation for everything we do.
So you may or may not know that at the end of every episode, I ask a hair horror story. And,
Oh,
and we have hundreds and hundreds of them. And the point is not to, of course, make fun or berate or humiliate, but the point is to learn from mistakes, right?
yes.
And while there's such a variation of things that can go wrong behind the chair, I would say probably 25% of the hair horror stories are I was lifting my client or doing some other chemical service on my client, and the foils started smoking.
Smoking. I knew you were going to say that.
Right? And then,
Yes.
and then as I removed the foils, so removed the hair.
Yes.
And it's just pretty common. So tell us, I mean, how does one avoid such a situation?
Well, it has to do with, most of the time, it has to do with minerals in the hair. So minerals are a catalyst for your developer. They're going to make it go faster, like heat. It's going to speed it up. So it's going to cause a heating situation. So what you can do is you can make sure, and I love that people are doing this more often and talking about it, chelating the hair, making sure you do a chelating shampoo, a purifying shampoo prior, or have your client
I'm sorry, what is I've never heard that term. What is that?
So chelating is, you've got clarifiers and chelators. So chelators actually, it's like the chelator, I believe the word is claw. So the chelator shampoo comes and literally grabs onto the minerals so it can pull them off the hair, right? And it works positive, negative charge. So it will come in and it will grab onto those minerals so it can help wash them off. Now, a clarifier will get buildup, but not the minerals.
Got it. And so... Yeah. We sell a lot of hair product. Where do you find a chelator? And I've never heard of that word.
A chelator before. So there are chelators out there. Malibu is a brand that does a lot of chelating, right?
So does it say
crystal
chelator?
Gel
Does it say chelator on the? Yeah.
Some do, some don't. But you're looking for EDTA. It's an ingredient on the back. Yeah.
EDTA.
EDTA. EDTA.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah. Well, the chemical names are hard because they're long. So I like that we abbreviate them all. But EDTA is a really good one in the ingredient deck. I know there's one that Dr. Saeed made. I know Matrix has an alternate action, has some chelators in it. Malibu. So there's a couple companies that do, and they talk about it all the time now. Like, they probably didn't talk about it, and now they're talking about it. And so, but the challenge is, here's where a hairdresser will have a challenge with it. It's taking time away. So for me, what I would do is I would tell my clients to chelate before they came to see me. So I would have them buy the shampoo, right? And so it actually helps your color deposit better because now you've cleaned the hair off. Now the hair color, it's got a certain amount of chemical reaction time. And so in order to break through, all this buildup and mineral, it's taken away from some of your time, your chemical reaction time. You clean that off. Oh, so good.
But it's diminishing the risk of a disaster.
It's totally diminishing the risk of a disaster. I remember a young girl coming to see me to get her highlights, and she had just come from swimming, and I was like, "Oh no, we're gonna be shampooing and cleaning this hair off just in case because I didn't want to risk that."
What is the term for a chelator shampoo? Is there kind of a blanket term, kind of like we have a blanket term called bond builder? Is there and of course you have a blanket term in clarifying. Is there such a term that Malibu and the other products that are chelators use?
No, I don't know. That's a good question. I know they use crystal gel. Crystal gel is something that they use that. I don't know. Okay. They used to say, I think when you hear like old school, Beth Minardi talked a lot about chelating. So I remember I may have heard it from her first, chelating, that word, that term.
So it takes more time, but could you not upcharge for it? I mean, if we're not sure about the mineral, the integrity of your hair, we should do a chelating treatment
Shampoo.
before shampoo, call it a treatment. That sounds better. And it's $20, but it's going to give us, it makes it more likely that we're going to have a good outcome.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways you can go about it. The way I did it that way because I didn't want to sacrifice the time, and I was not in charge of my pricing in my books in the salon that I was in. So when you're in charge of that, 100%, you can do it in so many ways. But when you're not, there are a lot of stylists that are out there that are working in salons. They are not in charge of the pricing. So when you have situations like that, you got to figure out a way to work around it.
So let's talk about when you were behind the chair. What was the most difficult conversation that you ever had with a client? You never had no client ever got unusually personal and opened up?
Oh. You're talking about that. I thought you were talking about hard conversations.
I'm talking about anything.
Oh, anything. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there were certain clients that I wasn't excited to do their hair because they would talk about either politics that I didn't agree with, right? And you're like, oh gosh. Okay, and so then one time we had this Mimosa Saturdays, I think it was, and which is fine, right? Like all the clients will have mimosas, it's all good. But a client of mine just kept asking for another round and another round. But it wasn't me. It was me. And then she'd be processing and she'd ask another stylist. And then she'd ask another stylist. And we're like, oh my God, how are we gonna tell her no more mimosas for you, sister?
Yeah.
And then when
you're
she'd
cut
come
off.
in every Saturday, you're cut off. Everybody, so-and-so's coming today.
Yeah.
Only two.
Yeah. Put the mimosas away.
Put the mimosas away. Yeah, I honestly think we stopped doing the mimosas after because of the client.
Because of her. It's always one person screws it up for everybody.
Messes it up. We still talk about that today. Remember the mimosas? Yes. But they all look at me like it was my fault.
That's so funny.
Sorry.
If you could wave a wand and change anything about the industry at all right now, what would it be?
I think for me now, specifically because I spend so much time online, I think it's the way that we attack one another when we don't agree. That I would definitely, I'm like, God, we got to be better than that. If you don't agree, that's all good. Or if someone says something you don't like, it's all good. And they may be wrong, right? But you got to go about it in a more professional way. Like we always say, we're professionals. We're not just hairdressers. Well, then we need to act that way, right?
Yeah.
I always think, sometimes I laugh because, do you remember that movie Mean Girls?
I never saw it. I remember it, but I never saw it.
Sometimes when I see people arguing over the science, and I have these backroom conversations with cosmetic chemists, and I go, oh my gosh, that person's actually off. But they attack the other person, right? But they think they're right.
Yeah.
And then they think, and I'm like, well, I'm over here watching the whole thing with popcorn going, oh my God.
Do you jump in do you jump in with fact?
No, I don't. I used to. But I envision there's a scene in Mean Girls where they're in the lunchroom and they all turn into animals and they start attacking each other. And I'm like, this is what I vision, what this is happening, right?
Yeah.
But, it's like I see this conversation. I jump in when I'm tagged. I used to jump in and say what I thought. But the reality is they didn't ask me. Mm-hmm. And if I jump in, it doesn't matter because they won't listen anyway. And I don't mean to be negative, but that is just typically what will happen.
So often the case.
Or someone will tag me in another educator's post to check them, to use me as a person to check them.
Fact
and
check.
I will and I'll never do that publicly. I would never do that to somebody because I'm like, what's that going to do? It's not helpful for the person. And then, it's just, I don't know. It's just ugly.
Well, I'll take the other side of that right now. Mm-hmm. It might educate. Because especially when you have a disagreement publicly like that, lots of people gravitate to it, right? I mean, it's like there's a train wreck happening. People are gonna look, right? And so you always see all the likes, and there's like one person says something wrong or right, and I'll have like 8 likes on it, and no other comments have any of those. But you chiming in with some fact could be very educational for a lot of the people who are gravitating towards those kind of that controversial disagreement. But of course, that's uncomfortable because you don't want to humiliate somebody who might be wrong, I guess.
Well, now, and I think there's a way to go about it. So here's what I generally do. If I see something and I've not been called into the conversation, right? If someone calls me in, I will be kind in how I respond and respectful because there's a human being on both sides.
Sure.
Right. And so I think that's important. But I will make a post on my page and show here is the positive side. Like I always say to myself, put out the good. Don't be like pulling out the weeds like you're playing whack-a-mole, because you're never going to pull them all out. You're just going to frustrate yourself. You know what I mean? And so it just keeps coming. And so I'm like, I don't want to look like I'm playing whack-a-mole, nor do I want to feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole. And I don't know everything.
Nor do you want to spend the time to play whack-a-mole.
It's just not beneficial. Yes.
I know too many people who spend way too much time online just conversing in just such an unproductive way.
I've seen it. And I have absolutely seen it. And so I'm like, what can you do? And I'm like, well, the only thing I know to do is put out what I know to be true and what I know to be right. And again, I'm not always right, but here's what I love. I have a couple of cosmetic chemists that are on my page. And I remember when they came on, I was like, like, oh gosh, they're watching me. But I reached out and I said, listen, if you ever see me saying something that's not good or off, let me know. Because I have a really good friend, Lenny Strand. He says this all the time, and I love this.
I know
he
Lenny.
said, yeah, I love Lenny. He's a really, really good friend of mine. And he always says this, and I hold on to this and remind myself, I don't have to be right. I have to get it right. Right. So if you make it about you, and so that's why when they came on, I was like, but I was like excited at the same time. And I had to keep reminding them because like there are times too, they don't want to be the bad guy. Like they don't want to, say something in a way that's rude or disrespectful. But there have been times where I watch, and to your point, Eric, I have watched them put the truth, the scientific truth on there, and stylists completely ignore what they just said. And I thought, if you won't listen to the cosmetic chemists, right? Like, who will you listen to? I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, well, I mentioned the hair horror story. You must have some.
Yes. Well, this was, and it may not be a horror story for other people, but it was my first time having a hot root. That was quite horrific for me. And I'll tell you why it felt horrific for me. If you're learning from master stylists that are so good, you've never seen one. I had never seen one. and because I was in this new place working with this new line, I didn't know there were differences and I didn't know what they were and what they could be. So I'm doing this formula, I'm converting it. I'm like, well, what's wrong? It's like the same, it's 8 ash and 8 ash, And I get this hot root and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to solve the problem, right? And I was like, so you're just scrambling. Like, what do I do? What do I do? So it was a good fix. It was easy. Hot roots are easier to fix, than going too dark, but.
Yeah, so hot roots, meaning that the color's too bright or
too
wrong.
Light, too bright, right? Where Billie Eilish looks too light, too bright to where the bottom is. And so, I know it probably is not horrific for other people, but it was a horrific moment for me. That's the big one for me.
I would say that's the most moderate hair horror story. We can't even call that a horror story. That was like a hair annoying, maybe like an annoying event. That wasn't a horror story.
For me, it was horror, but I will tell you, because I'm a very cautious hairdresser, right?
Okay.
And so there's a lot of hairdressers that maybe are a little bit more free and they'll just do it and then learn after. I am
Sure.
such a why person that I was like, if I didn't know what was going to happen, I wouldn't do it. So I'm cautious, which is so
Right.
funny. It drives my mentor crazy because I wasn't just like a free for all. But it turns out it's actually a huge forte when you're teaching. So,
Sure. Of course. Of course. That makes you a good
yeah,
educator.
yes.
Well, this has been an awesome story that you've given everybody, and I've loved this conversation. Do you have any last words for the community?
Yeah, I just think just stay open. That's my new thing. Stay open. It shouldn't be new, but it is new, no matter where you are. If you're 20 years in and you think you've got it all, stay open because you just might not yet, right? There
So
might be
true.
something you're missing. Even for me, and no matter how, like, I know so much and I tell myself to stay open because there have been times where I learned from a certain chemist or whatnot, and I find out, holy cow, from these three other chemists, it wasn't right. And I went, oh, stay open. Because no matter how much you think you know, there's always something more to learn.
Ex- exactly. I think there was, I put something on my Instagram. I alternate on my Instagram between wise quotes from wise people
Uh huh.
and like visual things. And there was something that I think it was from John Wooden, famous
Yeah.
basketball coach.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
he he liked to say, "It's what you learn after you know it all that counts."
Oh, that's so good. I feel like that smacks me in the face pretty often.
Yeah.
So, that's why I don't come into these conversations as hard as I used to because I'm smarter now.
Modesty. Modesty is a sign of self-confidence, isn't it? Maturity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I have matured, and hopefully I'll continue to mature. But I have matured in that arena.
Well, Julie, this has been awesome. And again, your Colors with Chemistry, colorswithchemistry.com and Colors with Chemistry on Instagram. And you have so much to offer the industry and colorists. So I hope the listeners hit you up.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. I'm so glad I got to meet you finally.
Same.